Let's dive in. Joint practice yesterday. I'm told the defense is just dominated. Both sides. Offenses struggled mightily. We'll get more into the weeds and some of the details. I'm told Anthony Schwartz had a good day. Caught a couple of deep balls. I'm told Amari Cooper did not have a good day. Uncharacteristically dropped some passes that he normally brings in. These joint practices, and we talked about it yesterday, so I'll start with you, Jay. Do you buy the notion that you can substitute real snaps in the preseason for these joint practices and either get as much or the same out of it?
The coaches love it, so I'll defer to them. They're the ones in charge of this.
Why do they love it?
Because it's a more controlled environment. You're not exposed to injuries. Jalen Hurts, for example, isn't going to get – he'll get hit in a preseason game. He's going to get hit and sacked, whereas in this, you can get there. You can see clearly it would have been a sack,
right,
but you're not taking him to the ground.
Right.
So it's situations like that I think coaches love. It's 100%. It's full speed. I remember watching last year. It is full go. But at the same time, it's also controlled in that you're not exposing guys to unnecessary risk and unnecessary injuries. Browns had some guys limping off yesterday. I don't think anything of it is any real concern.
Do we want to detail those?
Miles is
Denzel
fine.
Ward was ill.
Conklin.
Yeah, Conklin sounds like it could be possibly the most serious if it's a concussion.
Yeah. And Miles got rolled up on. I was trying to figure out if it was the same foot that Miles injured at the Pro Bowl. Do we know?
Oh, that's a good question. I didn't even think about that.
Because I asked a couple of people and they were unclear. So I guess
I don't know.
Mary Kay did report that as he was walking off, he smiled and said, "I'm fine, don't worry about it." And signed autographs.
He did sign autographs afterwards. Our producer told me. I was just curious. Was it the same foot?
Right.
I'd be a little more alarmed from the season.
That's exactly right.
You know? Yeah,
we're
fine.
I was having that conversation with Mikey when I was at Greenbrier and we were talking about Amari Cooper. I'm like, we're 6 weeks still.
Yeah.
From it, like this is nothing. Like it just doesn't matter.
It's a serious injury. It's,
yeah. So
doesn't move the meter for you on any of those.
No.
Yeah.
But just the fact of, I do think that the joint practice is a good idea. I know Kevin loves them. He wants to do them. I mean, he'll probably do them every year.
Yeah.
This is now back-to-back with Philly. He'll probably pick up another team next year, I would think, and do the same thing with the home and home.
Yeah.
The Giants have been here. Obviously, we know about the debacle with the Colts a couple years ago.
Sure.
But just the fact that, like I said, you can get good work in. It's controlled. You can sort of keep a harness on it, whereas in the preseason, anything goes. And that's why more and more teams are shying away from playing their guys in preseason games because of the injury risk. Anybody can get hurt at any time playing football. We all know that. Yeah. But they just feel like it's a little bit more of a controlled setting in this where you can get the work in and not expose guys to unnecessary injuries.
Denzel had a pick yesterday, by the way, of Jalen Hurts, which is good.
I got to say, in all sports, but especially baseball and football, because those are the two sports I pay most attention to, we are more increasingly babying players. We are more increasingly being scared of injuries, and yet we have more injuries than ever.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's
or
a school
I
of
should
thought
say, at least it seems that way.
So I was going to say there's no raw data that says, well, this year injuries are up 19% from 10 years ago when we had two-a-days. There's no raw data of that, but it always seems when you only are relying on anecdotal and memory, it always seems like, man, we've got a lot of injury. Well, they do happen every year. To your point, Bull, and I don't know what the answer is, Jay. I don't even know what the establishment would say of this. There's one school of thought that says to get ready, you've got to hit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you might open yourself up to injuries, but instead of those injuries happening in the regular season when you flip the switch to full go, they're now happening in the preseason. I don't know what the establishment, what the NFL looks at and what they deduce from that, if they can even make anything of it.
No, you're right. And even the guys that don't play in the preseason will tell you still have to hit to get ready to play. So they do agree with that. It's just the amount, and again, being strategic on when that timing is. Obviously, I spent more time around the NBA than anything else, and I know they take it unbelievably seriously with the monitors that they wear and when guys are running in the red. They've done sleep studies of staying over in extra cities, staying an extra night, getting a full night's rest, rather than flying home, getting home at 2, 3 in the morning and having that choppy sleep. A lot of it comes down to what these guys are making now. They're making so much money. This is such an investment.
You're protecting your investment.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're protecting.
Well, it's similar to the pitch count in baseball that used to not exist.
Yeah.
But now we're seeing it, particularly with the Guardians and all their rookies this year.
Yeah.
They're on strict pitch counts,
but
and
again,
they don't break them.
Yes, it's anecdotal when I'm saying, it seems like there's just as many injuries.
Right.
But if it was clearly there were less injuries, we would notice that.
I think
it would be
I
obvious.
really do wish that there was better data. One of the reasons we don't have good data is what I'm told is because 10 years ago, they didn't really keep hard, fast numbers on every nick, ding, and like they do today.
Yes,
that's true.
So I don't know.
And a lot of guys did play through a lot more
Absolutely,
a few years ago than
Right.
what. I mean, I think I told the story. I think Brad was in when I was telling the story. Michael Wilbon told a great story about when Michael Jordan was playing, when he was covering Michael. And Michael would walk in the trainer's room, and there would be 5 or 6 guys up there, and Michael go, get out, go get dressed, go get
you're
dressed,
playing.
go.
That's
And that's just the way that it went. And
Yeah.
that doesn't happen anymore. Now, again, because of the investment, because of what these guys are making, if you get a hamstring, you shut it down for 3 or 4 days.
Sure.
To the baseball point, what's interesting, you would know this better than anybody. I look at it, I really want to do a deep dive on the Rays. Because I look at
They're fascinating.
something is going on there.
I agree.
They take
But
these
they
pitchers.
don't overuse pitchers.
Well, they take pitchers that no one's ever heard of, that have never had any
They
success.
flip them into stars,
and then they get hurt and they have Tommy John.
and then they go out and get 2 more and,
And
do the same
that's
thing with
exactly
them.
right. Something
Jason, I'm
is going on
fascinated
there.
by it. Now, if you look at their track record of success with young pitchers, it mirrors what the Guardians are doing,
Yes.
which makes sense.
But
There's some crossover in those
But
organizations.
there is more churn there. With I don't know if it's the way that they, and I don't want to go off on a baseball tangent 11:15 on a Browns day. I know. But I don't know if it's the way that pitchers, because we're talking injuries, if they are putting more torque on their elbow and they're throwing things differently than they did 30
the
years
spin rate,
ago.
look at how we prioritize spin rate
Yes.
now. And I'll tell you from somebody who has worked with spin rate count and have tried, I've worked with a machine that actually will try to get it up, and there's absolutely more torque.
Yeah.
There's, there's more torque. And so I don't know if the extra RPM are worth the increase in injuries, because you're absolutely right. Something's going on. But the Astros are another organization that put a high priority on spin rate. And their guys all dramatically improved their spin rate, and they don't seem to be having the injuries that the Rays have. I'm wondering, I don't know.
Yeah, it's
I don't
weird.
know.
And then to pull us back to football, and as we talk about baseball and torque and spin rate and everything else, to bring it to football, guys are bigger, stronger, faster than they've ever been before.
So you expect more injuries.
So there's going to be harder collisions and more injuries. These guys were smoking cigarettes and working construction 40 years ago in the
That's
offseason.
so true.
And now all they do is work out. So it stands to reason there's going to be more injuries because the collisions are so much harder than they were.
I'm not really worried about the collisions. I worry about the non-contact injuries. Those are the ones that all the football players are worried about.
Well, like Joe Burrow had.
You know, the non-contact
Achilles,
stuff, when
knees.
you plant, your knee goes out, or the Achilles heel, right?
And you'll never wipe those out of the game.
No,
Ever.
Those are just part of it, and it goes to. I've watched a guy, and there's a lot of guys who do ACL reconstructions, and you look at some of the science behind the ACL. They can show you why women's soccer players have the most ACL injuries just because the way that their hips are set. And the way it proportionate to
They're putting more pressure on that joint.
It also shows like concave and convex. Like, LeBron James, he's bow-legged, right? He's bow-legged and slightly pigeon-toed. Those guys who are bow-legged and pigeon-toed very rarely tear ACLs. Guys like me who are a little not needed, like their knees go in a little bit.
Your feet are pronated.
Yes.
They go out.
You're more prone to doing that. There are now guys who now do exercise and studies, and I've been watching guys, especially these wide receiver coaches are teaching guys, when you plant, you have to, you can't get outside of the framework of your body, because that's when those injuries happen, when you plant and now your weight is now put on one leg or one limb. They teach them how to cut without being outside the framework of your body, and we never had that. We was just running around. So hopefully that the science catches up with the way you do things.
Yeah.
You saw, if you watch the quarterback documentaries, you saw Patrick Mahomes' trainer doing all these kind of weird exercises with him.
Flexibility.
Flexibility and injury prevention. So
flexibility is huge in the track and field world. I only know because of my son.
Yeah.
And their approach on injuries, now they get a lot of big motor injuries, like your hamstrings, your glutes, your quads. One of the things that they do to alleviate it is ridiculous stretching exercises, not just before a competition, but before any strenuous activity. I know my son, who was prone to injury earlier in his career, and then really got into the stretching world, was relatively injury-free from there out.
Yeah. Well,
so I think there is something to that.
Yeah.
Here's what we need Corey to do, because I know he's watching, or he will watch.
He watches every day. Yeah.
Corey, I need you to. We got the WKYC softball game this Saturday. I need you to send me a stretching regimen
No, it's Sunday, isn't
Bull
it?
just
Yeah,
asked
Sunday.
Jay's
Oh,
kid to stretch
Sunday,
him out.
right.
Can we just take a second
Pause.
to realize what just happened?
Pause.
What I say?
Super duper.
You just asked my son to stretch you out.
Yeah. And he wasn't talking
That
about.
might be the biggest super
That's a
duper
good
pause
pause.
of all time.
And it
That's
was-
a freeze.
And he was not talking about over a pick either. Like,
Children.
I
All right, I don't like
I need a
children.
bunch of
Jamal.
exercises
I don't-
from him.
And we've got Bull's son Aaron
Yeah.
is in house today.
Yeah.
I wanted to point that out. It's his last day in studio before he has to go back to school next week.
Yeah, that's true.
And I asked him, "What are you most excited about?" And he said, "Recess."
Yeah.
Other
Good-
than that,
good-
I'm not excited.
good answer.
So
good
that's
answer.
the typical kid his age. No
Even
one
though he's
ever
a
is.
senior in intermediate school.
Oh, on the injury front, I want to ask you a question about the helmets. Okay.
Yeah.
We see these spaceman padded
Yeah,
helmets.
yeah.
There must be something to it.
Yep.
Then why aren't they wearing them in games?
In games, that's a good question. I don't know enough about them to give a good answer because I laugh at them at practice too.
I laugh.
Well, you can't can you put logos on those things? Like, that's probably.
Absolutely, you can.
Yeah.
You can dress them up. You can make them
That's
all
true.
orange, put stripes down the middle. You could do whatever you wanted to. But when I first saw them, I'm like, those look ridiculous. And then I started thinking about the actual. It's a race to find the perfect helmet.
Yeah.
I've had some doctors that study brain injuries tell me emphatically it's impossible.
They're right.
The brain injury occurs on the sudden stop, and the brain keeps moving
Yep.
and slams against the inside of the concussion
Super
or
facts.
inside of the skull.
Skull, yeah.
So I've had doctors that have worked in this field for a lifetime tell me there is no such thing as a perfect helmet. On the other hand, I know people who are with individual groups. Among them, Sean Springs, the former Buckeye
Yeah.
corner and NFL, real good career as a
Yeah.
pro. He's with a group that's trying to develop the perfect helmet. And they're doing all kinds of testing and science, and they hook all these monitors up to it. And then I see these simple pads. And I've often said, just go back to the old leather helmets. And people look at me like I'm nuts. And I say, well, you use your helmet now as a weapon, not as a device to save
Well, but
you.
they've been trying to get that out of.
But
Yeah.
but the inclination for a player is,
Yeah.
I've got it, I'm going
know.
to use it.
But if the
Where-
sci-
what guys weren't leading head first when they were wearing leather
No, that's
helmets.
true. That's true. But
You know,
but in the end, the scientists are saying, as you said,
There's
your
no-
brain keeps moving. So what could the helmet matter?
Well, now, so here was the interesting thing about that,
Yeah.
because when I saw him, I immediately flashed back to a conversation I had with a brain specialist.
Yeah.
And here's how it happens. Instead of the hard shell helmet absorbing the blow,
Yeah.
now you have a soft, cushiony device that's automatically going to slow down the helmet, the head, and ultimately the brain before it impacts the skull. Because there's now a cushion that's not between the hard shell and the head the way it is now. All that's going to do is it's going to still force the inside of the head against that cushion. It's still going to come to an abrupt stop. If there's now a soft shell around the helmet, that's going to absorb the impact instead of the brain.
I got D's in science. I'm the last one that
Yeah.
should be talking about this type of stuff. But it is interesting to me. I kind of liken it to cars in the 60s and 70s that were these tanks that when you hit them, your body absorbed the shock. The car didn't budge.
Sure. And your
Now-
body in this
My
instance is
77 Caddy Coupe de Ville.
exactly. Yeah, you're dead in that.
but now-
your body in that scenario is the brain inside the skull.
Yes, and now if you get in a car wreck, the car is, you can go 10 miles an hour and total your car.
You can.
Because the car takes all the force and you walk out fine.
I've experienced that within the last 6 months.
Yeah, right out here.
When you looked at my car, I couldn't believe I got out of it and walked
Yeah.
away. My car was completely totaled.
Yeah.
But you're right. That's exactly what science has done with automobiles. And I'm wondering, when I first saw those soft shells on the helmet, I thought, well, hell, if they're wearing them in practice,
Yeah.
there must be some data that shows that it works.
And maybe that's where this if there's a
How
way
did we get down this road, by the way?
we're talking player safety.
Oh.
if there's a way for the helmet to be the car and absorb the shock, maybe that's the way. But again, I got D's in science. I ain't the one.
Yeah.
And you forgot your laptop, so we'll move on.
And my laptop's somewhere in
McNuggets.
UPS.
We're still good. We got a few more minutes in the joint practices. G,
Okay.
I know you are, of the four of us, the one that played football at the highest level and really any level of football. You talked a little bit about yesterday the importance of game snaps and how they can't be totally replicated in a joint practice situation. Do you feel like, in the grand scheme of things, that some of these guys may be tricking themselves into thinking they can get the same thing out of a joint practice as they could from a preseason game?
Yeah, they trick themselves, but they understand it. Like, there's no way you can eliminate injuries. Like, so what you do is you kind of talk yourself into certain things, and you're like, okay, well, what's the highest level that we can get to where we can actually do something to get something out of these drills without guys going all the way to the ground. And so, yeah, you can get something out of it, but, you know, when you've played football before, you just understand that when you get out there and the adrenaline gets to moving, and that's why they don't want to play guys in preseasons, because even starters understand that when you step on the field at any point in time, you got to go 100%. There's no such thing as 75%, 60%, and getting something out of it. You got to go 100%, because if you don't, that's when you get hurt. For me, I don't think you're going to get the same reads that you would see in a regular game, because, you know, Jay spoke about it. There's no threat of being injured, right? And a lot of the sacks, and I'll say as a defensive lineman, a lot of the sacks that they do get, I think those are placebo. I don't count those, because a lot of times when you're playing a guy like Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts or somebody like that, like, you're not going to tag off on him.
The hard part's getting them to the ground.
You got to get him on the ground.
And I know yesterday they got to him a number of times, and then obviously the whistle blows, but there's no finishing of that process. But you're right. With a guy like Hurts, the hard part is getting him on the ground.
That's the hardest part, because, like, you see a lot of guys, the most dangerous position for a defensive line is if I'm standing right next to you. Because now he's quicker than you are inside this box. He can give you a spin move. He can back up. It's hard to get these guys on the ground, and sometimes it doesn't simulate what you need to do, especially in terms of 7-on-7 too. Sometimes I see these guys running these routes on one-on-ones, and the corner and the DB will start off on the right-hand side, and this guy will run all the way across the field, like on a long, deep over route. You're like, dude, you're not going to do that in the game.
You don't have time.
You don't got time to be running all the way over there doing that. It just doesn't simulate the real game to me. But it's the best of both worlds. They're trying to figure out some way to get some reps. I get it. And it's always that thin line between I want my guys to be sharp, or you're going to have to deal with hell if one of your guys, if Deshaun Watson get hurt in one of the wet, slippery games like in the preseason, you're done.
You want them sharp. You need them healthy. Couple of things as we bow this topic. One, we just saw that they got to Hurts 6 times yesterday. Again, I was told the offenses just did very little to nothing. They had a drill late in the practice where they kind of did a 2-minute drill. Neither offense moved it past midfield. So it was all a defensive show. Yeah. They worked on punting yesterday. They can work on field goals today.
Good.
One thing, quickly, does it matter to the three of you that the reports last year was Philly manhandled the Browns? I mean, I don't think there was any denying that. Anybody that was there saw it with their own eyes and they knew. All the folks that I talked to yesterday said, this defense looked dominant. Does that even matter to you? Because I know we always talk about preseason. It is what it is.
Nothing really matters to me. Nothing. Very little moves the needle for me,
Jay?
Good or bad, in the preseason.
So here's where I have to come down on this, because last year Philly kicked their ass when they were here,
and it kind of it was a precursor of what we saw from the Browns and the Eagles. And we try to temper it and say it's only a couple of days. This didn't look good. They whipped their ass, but it is what it is. But then you look and see Philly goes on the Super Bowl and the Browns fall apart. Now, I'm not going to say this is the reversal of that, but I have to give the same credence this year to what we gave last year of call it for what it is. It was a great day for the Browns. That could lead to really good things, but it's still only one day. Yeah.
So
it's better than getting our ass kicked.
It absolutely is. So if if you had a bad taste over last year and how it went, well, then you should feel good about this.
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, certainly you have to feel better than it was last year, leaving those joint practices going, wow, Philly's really, really good.
Yeah, and we could be really, really bad.
Yeah.
Last year, they were passive. They were bend but don't break. They were trying to figure it out, bad communication. If you listen to everybody talk, you listen to JOK, you listen to Myles Garrett, you listen to Zadarius Smith. One of the things that shines through defensively is that the Cleveland Browns are playing a different style of game. They're aggressive. They make sure that the guys understand, don't worry about no mistakes. Get upfield and be aggressive. And as a defensive player, I'm a player who likes to be aggressive, who likes to get upfield, who likes to have, put the offense on some onus on them to make some plays.
Yeah, get them on their heels.
Get them on their heels, and I think everybody in that locker room loves the way that his philosophy is. They still have to go out and prove it, but I think that the defense is going to be very good this year. They have the pieces, they have the parts, and I think they're going to be very quietly surprising. They may be better than the offense for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the year.
I expect them to be.
By the way,
offense.
for those who may care about such things, I was looking at Pro Football Focus before the year will grade position groups.
Yeah.
And they had the Browns linebackers as the 14th best in the NFL.
They're smoking something. I don't know what, but that's
Maybe they're
nuts.
I think Anthony Walker had like an 80-something grade before.
Anthony Walker and Taki were both. Now they acknowledged, hey, this group has had a lot of injuries, and so it could go down the toilet. But their theory was, if they stay healthy, they'll be fine at linebacker.
Yeah. Jay, you buy that? 14th best linebacking core?
No.
Well, how? Are you guys paying attention to other teams' linebacking cores?
Well, we see them when we play them. And we watch other football games. It's not like we just watch
I don't
the
know.
Browns.
I'm not. But I don't pay close attention to other teams' linebacking cores.
I don't either, but I've paid close enough attention to the Browns to know that last year
But it's not. They're basing it more on what they think is going to happen this year.
they didn't change.
I think that says more than anything about the Browns that linebacking cores around the league are relatively
That's the
weak
point.
And that's what we readily admit that. We readily admit that position has been devalued.
And we talked about
But
that.
to say that they're in the upper half, I just think that's a stretch.
That's about half. It's about the middle
Yeah,
point.
I mean, you're
It's about
close.
the midway
16 would
point.
be the midway point.
Yeah.
To
So-
me, I just don't feel like they're an upper half.
I do think if they stay healthy, we talked about this before, the way that in Schwartz's scheme that the linebacker is devalued.
Right.
It's the least important position.
He could hide that
of all
warp
of-
very easily.
Yeah, if they stay healthy, I like Anthony Walker. I think
Yeah.
he's fine. I think JOK could have a big year in this system. If it doesn't work for JOK in this scheme,
He's
I don't
gone.
know where it's going to work.
Yeah, I don't either.
I think they like his upside. If he can play, if he can make plays,
Yeah.
running around in the field, being free and just making plays.
He looked
great.
different Friday night.
He looked like a
Again,
different player a little bit.
Taki was playing very well before he got hurt.
I've
His
always
best
liked him a
football.
little bit. I liked
Yeah.
him a little bit.
So
All right, Mike, take it away.